The year was 1964. The air in the then state of Madras was heavy with the apprehension that as the Indian Republic marks its 15th anniversary on 26 January 1965, English would be replaced as the official language of the country with Hindi. Much to the bemusement of onlookers, on January 24, 1964, a 27-year-old man, Chinnasamy, jubilantly went about distributing sweets in his village. This day, Hindi is going to die and my Tamil language is going to have an eternal life, he told anyone who cared to ask. In letters he wrote subsequently, Chinnasamy, who had only studied until class 3, said, "O Tamil, I am going to die to keep you alive. They have made an amendment to assassinate you, and I am going to go to the warfield and perish around 11 a.m. At the break of dawn the next day, Chinnasamy left his home, his aging mother, a young wife, and an infant daughter behind, and reached a railway station with a can of petrol as his only possession. He then proceeded to empty the can on himself and set him ablaze. His last words were, Inti Olika Tamil Valka, that is, death to Hindi, may Tamil flourish. For the next few months, there was utter pandemonium in the state. 1965, the year after which Hindi was to become the sole official language of India, was fast approaching. In December 1964, then Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri said in a statement at Shantiniketan that to retain English as the official language for all time seems to me a deeply humiliating proposition. Madras was up in flames. Dozens died by suicide and in riots. Hundreds were put behind bars. Classes in schools and universities were suspended indefinitely. Looking at Tamil Nadu at the time, US political analyst Selig Harrison's ominous prediction of India being split into a number of small nationalities didn't seem too far-fetched. Indian media up north, much like its Western counterparts, was confused and disgusted at the fanaticism and the frenzy it had typically come to associate with Tamil speakers. Decades after the protests of the 1960s, the language question has become dominant in Tamil Nadu once again. Chief Minister M.K. Stalin recently urged Tamilians to rise against Hindi imposition through the centre's three-nation policy, just like they did 6 decades ago. In the recently concluded session of Parliament, the MPs of the ruling DMK protested against the centre wearing black outfits, while Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman kicked up a storm by stating in Parliament that the DMK reveres the person who once called Tamil a barbaric language, that is Periyar. Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister jumped into the debate by saying that though Tamil is as ancient as Sanskrit, why should love for it evoke hate against Hindi? Meanwhile, Prime Minister Narendra Modi on his visit to the state on 6th of April took a dig at Stalin for not using Tamil in his signatures. As the cloud of language politics looms over Tamil Nadu-centre relations once again, we explain how and why the Tamil language came to be the cornerstone of modern Tamil identity. If indeed, as Adityanath suggested, love for Tamil tends to evoke hate for Hindi. Why a figure like Periyar, who opposed North Indian domination all his life, saw Tamil as barbaric, and how, in recent years, the BJP's discursive ascent in Tamil Nadu has brought to the fore its people's entrenched apprehensions about language, identity, and their place in the Indian nation. To begin with, none of this is new. As G. Balachandran, a former IAS officer of the West Bengal cadre and former president of the Delhi Tamil Sangam, told us, a schism between Sanskrit and Tamil goes back at least 1,000 years. During the Chola period, the Brahmin population in southern India multiplied as there was an influx of Brahmins from the north. According to Balachandran, the king Rajendra Chola brought them from Rajasthan. Now, these Brahmins made several legislations to protect themselves in an alien land. For instance, there was already a law by then that even if a Brahmin kills someone, they cannot be punished. But during this period, several other legislations were added. For instance, it was during this time that the Brahmins made Sanskrit the official language of the temples, something that largely continues till today in Tamil Nadu despite much historical resistance. So, the contours between Sanskrit and Tamil were drawn very sharply from this time itself. As Balachandran said, the genesis of the Bhakti movement too lies in this context, since as a result of Sanskrit becoming the language of the temples, the temple-going population in southern India began to dwindle. There was also the issue of Jainism. Jainism was patronized by the Pallava kings and the Pandyan king Nedumaran. As a result of this too, the population of Saivite temples began to dwindle. Therefore, in order to encourage people to go to the temples from the time of Mahendravarman, who got converted from Jainism to Shaivism by Appar, the venerable Saivite state, rulers in this area began to patronize songs in the praise of Shiva in Tamil. So, from as early as the 7th century CE, the logic that there is a correlation between a Brahmin religious identity and the Sanskrit language on the one hand, and a non-Brahmin Shaivite identity and the Tamil language on the other existed. But how this latent schism, which had existed for centuries, transformed into a full-blown antagonism is the story of how colonialism overhauled existing social relations in Madras and how the British wrote the so-called definitive history of Tamil. Let's take a peek into this colonial history. Indians did not have an intelligent or discriminating interest in studying their own languages. A British missionary and linguist, Robert Caldwell, declared in 1856 in his book, A Comparative Grammar of the Dravidian Family of Languages. The natives, he said with great despair, did not undertake a comparative study of languages, did not even know that such a thing as family of languages existed, and certainly did not know the history of their languages. For context about how important Caldwell has been in the politics of the region since then, remember that the first DMK government in the state erected a large statue in 1967 in his honor, and his house in Tamil Nadu was converted into a memorial as recently as in 2012. It was the likes of Caldwell who took upon themselves to give a history to Indian languages and most significantly to Tamil. Their histories came with clear distinctions and, importantly, hierarchies. There was, according to them, a Dravidian family of languages which purportedly included Tamil and other South Indian languages, and then on the other hand there was an Indo-European family of tongues which included foremostly and significantly Sanskrit. As argued by Sumati Ramaswamy in The Passions of the Tongue, Language Devotion in Tamil India, the book, Sanskrit in this scheme of things was a classical tongue and Tamil a mere vernacular. Sanskrit was the language of the fair and noble Aryans, and Tamil was the tongue of the menial and dark-skinned Dravidians. This discourse on language was not taking place in a vacuum. Under the colonial rule, India was increasingly being imagined as primarily Hindu and Hinduism as primarily consisting of two streams, the Aryan religion and the Dravidian religion. The Aryan religion was supposedly found in Brahminical texts in Sanskrit, according to this discourse. The Dravidian religion of the Aboriginals, on the other hand, according to this discourse, had no robust textual source and was therefore barbaric. Fear-ridden, hideous, and wholly degrading is how, for instance, the Baptist missionary Wilbur Theodore Elmore described the Dravidian religion. Such was the valorization of the Aryan religion and the disdain for the Dravidian religion that a 1912 Government of India document said, whatever be their present-day union or interminglement, it is difficult to imagine any original connection between the Aryan Brahmins and their subtle philosophies with the gross demonolatry of the Dravidian peoples who surround them. Remember, this was a government document. Those who identified themselves as Aryan Brahmins were ecstatic. They, according to this narrative which they appropriated with gusto, were the corrupted ones, while the Dravidians were the corruptors. To save Hinduism, they felt they only needed to go back to the uncorrupted Aryan Brahminic texts. Slowly, a new life was being breathed into the centuries-old schism between the outsider, Sanskrit-speaking Brahmin and the Tamil-speaking local. The latter, particularly the English-educated and speaking ones among them, were devastated. In almost a single stroke, they were dismissed as inferior, their influence labelled hideous and corrupting, their language reduced to the state of a mere vernacular, and their religion as barbaric, irrational, and lacking scriptural foundations. They had to somehow challenge this new discourse. A respectable history of Tamil or Dravidian religion, language, and culture had to be discovered. Not accidentally, the bare bones of this history too was found in colonial and missionary writings. The same Elmore who termed the Dravidian religion as barbaric, for instance, also argued that it far preceded Aryan arrival all over India. The ancient Tamil society, he said, was egalitarian and uncorrupted by the oppressive caste system of the Aryans. Now, the upwardly mobile and English educated Tamils lapped up this narrative. They were the ones who had originally been the civilized ones, and it was the Aryans, the Brahmins who came from the north, who had corrupted their monotheistic, rational, and casteless religion, that is, Shaivism. This is what they now said. To attain the lost glory of the Dravidians, they asserted, their religion and language had to be cleansed of the polluting Aryan and Sanskritic influences. This was also a time when local social relations were in a state of flux. If the Aryan Brahmins were the new enemy at the national level, the Tamil Brahmins, that is, the outsiders of the 6th and 7th centuries, were the enemy within. Over the centuries, the Tamil Brahmins had come to develop strong ties of dependence on the local landlord castes in southern India. But under colonial rule and the many opportunities it brought for the Brahmins, these relationships began to strain. As avenues of English education and modern professions opened up, the dependence of Brahmins on the wealthy landowning castes began to diminish. Law, medicine, education, politics. Brahmins, a minority of just 3% in colonial Madras, were suddenly everywhere. They now asserted their religious and spiritual dominance in Sanskrit and their secular dominance in English. Tamil, the language of the people, suddenly became the language of the Shudras. Why Shudras, you may ask? Balachandran, the ex-IAS officer who we've quoted above, explained that unlike in other parts of India, the Brahmins in Madras did not make strategic alliances with other upper castes. Instead, they began to categorize all non-Brahmins as Shudras, thereby greatly offending the elite and landowning castes on whom they had been dependent economically. As a result, Tamil, the language of the non-Brahmins, became a core part of the newly shaping modern Tamil identity, which was being formed in opposition to the English and Sanskrit-speaking Brahmins. But there was a problem still. Even among this non-Brahmin category, the elite dominated. These were the elite non-Brahmin, wealthy and upwardly mobile castes who, much like the Brahmins, were educated in English and were competing for the same jobs and prestige as the Brahmins in the colonial system. They thus sought to elevate Tamil to the divine and ancient status of Sanskrit and thereby assert that Tamil was the language of Shaivism, and both the Dravidian religion and Tamil itself had been corrupted due to the contact with the Aryan religion and Sanskrit. On the political front, in 1916, a group of nationalists from the Madras presidency, who had until then been with the Indian National Congress, got together and published something called the Non-Brahmin Manifesto and formed the Justice Party. Indians were not ready for self-rule, it declared, and if the British were to grant it to them, it would lead to nothing but the tyranny of Brahmins over others. Through books, journals, religious and Tamil classes, conferences, local libraries, these non-Brahmin elites captured the modern public sphere of Madras like never before. By this time, Tamil had completely ceased to be just an inanimate language and had been elevated as a political, religious and social identity of Tamil Nadu, the land of Tamil. But the fundamental question remained: how could the movement for Tamil be drawn out of chamber halls to the streets? Enter E.V. Ramaswamy Naikar, that is Periyar. As explained by Balachandran, the social composition of the Justice Party was extremely elite. They were, after all, the zamindars who were exploiters of the Shudras in their own right. But in order to challenge the might of the Brahmins, they had created this category and become its spokesperson. To be sure, the Justice Party, which came to power in the Madras presidency in 1920, did a lot in terms of social justice, particularly introducing reservation to break the Brahmin hegemony in government jobs. But their preoccupations with regard to religion and language were elitist. For instance, historians say that the Hindu Endowment Act, which gave the government the control over Hindu temples, an issue which continues to be a sore point for many Hindutva groups even now, was brought by the Justice Party at the time, largely to seize control of the temples from the Brahmins. Even the Tamil used by them was a purist, sanitized version of the language alien to ordinary Tamilians, says Ramaswamy in her book. For Periyar, the atheist, who was himself a member of the Justice Party, neither the party's politics nor its language was increasingly making sense. It was actually not representative of the oppressed. As argued by A.R. Venkatachallapati in the book Tamil Characters, Personalities, Politics, Culture, until the 1920s, the language of the non-Brahmin movement was either English or highly stylized and sophisticated Tamil. It was Periyar who changed that. He didn't just despise Sanskrit, he equally despised the Sanskritization of Tamil. For him, Tamil was neither divine nor ancient. It was not an object of devotion, but the language of the people. It was in this context that he termed Tamil as a barbarian language, for clinging to ancient glories without adapting them to modern needs, as mentioned by Sita Raman in Parliament last month. Using the tales, similes, illustrative stories, proverbs, and popular sayings of ordinary Tamilians, he changed the social composition of the non-Brahmin in Tamil Nadu forever. It was thus Periyar who transformed the Tamil identity from an elite non-Brahmin identity to a mass non-Brahmin identity that could mobilize dozens of barely educated men like Chinnaswamy to give up their lives for its cause. You can read more on this story on ThePrint.in. This is Anya Dhingra signing off.